Who are the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL today? What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL rankings video. The first rankings video for the defensive side of the football. In this video, breaking down the big boys in the middle, the big interior defensive linemen, the guys that you think about getting to the quarterback, stopping the run. These players are extremely valuable to an NFL team today to push the pocket and get after quarterbacks and single-handedly slow down the run game. In this video, I break down the underrated, loaded position of the interior defensive line, giving you my top 25 at the position entering 2022. If that sounds good, don't forget to spike the like button and subscribe to the channel for more BLV just like this. Also, hop in the comment section below and let me know if your team has any of the elite interior defensive linemen in this league today, and where do you believe they belong on this list. Also, let me know your favorites at the position in the comment section below. Kicking off my top 25 interior defensive linemen in the NFL today, at number 25, a Hall of Fame talent, one of the most dominant interior defensive linemen in NFL history, J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt is my number 25 of the Arizona Cardinals because he still flashes that all-time potential and ability. He flashes it. It's there in games and stretches, but it's not there consistently, mostly due to the fact that JJ Watt just cannot play a full season. He cannot tie together a full season. JJ Watt has injury issues, and that's always what's derailed his career. Once upon a time, JJ Watt was the most dominant player at this position. Before there was Aaron Donald, there was JJ Watt. He was as dominant, if not more dominant, than Aaron Donald. He was that good, that special. He still flashes that today. The ability to wreck the run game. The ability to have an offense pay attention to you on every single snap that you're on the field. To double team you. To wreck the game by batting down passes. To wreck the game by rushing the passer in the inside and causing an uncomfortable quarterback pocket. JJ Watt can still do those things. It's just not as consistent. A lot of it is because he's dealing with injuries all the time. He's having to overcome injury all the time. So it's really hard to stay consistent, but he's still really good. And if he's on your team, you don't necessarily want him to be the go-to guy at this position because he is unreliable, but he's still really explosive and a good football player. That's why you would like him to maybe be that number 2 in this role to really be able to get the best and the most benefit out of JJ Watt. The other thing I'll say about him is when Arizona did not have him, it showed. Like, they were way worse versus the run, and he made them a ton better in that category. So he still belongs in the top 25, even with the injury issues, at number 25. My number 24 interior defensive lineman entering 2022 is DJ Jones, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers, now a Denver Bronco. DJ Jones is one of the premier big men in the middle when it comes to defending the run. He led the NFL in run stops this season, and he was the big man in the middle that sort of took on the DeForest Buckner role, the former DeForest Buckner role in San Francisco, where he was the guy doing the dirty work. He was the big man in the middle, stuffing the run, and allowing Nick Bosa and ARIK ARMSTEAD to get to the quarterback. He was the dirty work type of guy, and it only really took place when Kinlaw went down with injury, and then DJ Jones fully exploded onto the scene. He's not somebody that's going to get to the quarterback a ton. He's not a premier pass rusher. That's why he's not super high on this list. But I do believe he's an extremely underrated player, and he is the type of defensive lineman that allows you to be more creative in the back end, send more players in coverage because you know that he can eat up blocks and get to the running back and make plays himself. He can make individual plays by himself, taking on blocks, defeating them, and getting tackles for loss. So DJ Jones, an absolute monster, a lot of fun to watch. keep your eye on him in Denver as his snaps go up. My number 23 interior defensive lineman in the NFL entering 2022 is Calais Campbell. Calais Campbell is still grading at a very high level. He is one of the most consistent veteran players in the NFL at any position. His ability to consistently be a monster and a handful to deal with in the run game, unbelievable. He is a true Baltimore Raven at this stage in his career. He's not exactly a premier pass rusher like he was maybe in Jacksonville. Obviously, he plays a different role, and that's the thing I respect about Calais Campbell the most. He, to me, is arguably, and I would not even say arguably, I think he is a Hall of Fame player, and it's because he has the capability of playing any position on the defensive line. You want him to play edge. He's shown he can do that. He did it in Jacksonville. You want him to play 3-4 style defensive end. He can do that. You want him to play 4-3 tackle. He can do that. You want him to play nose tackle. He's tall enough and big enough and strong enough to do that. He can do everything. You could put him at every spot. He's still athletic enough to stand him up once in a while and make plays that way, and still quick enough to flow sideline to sideline. But more at this stage, he's the big run stuffer, uses his length, uses his power and his strength to hold out blockers and make plays that way and allow others to shine around him as pass rushers. So he's not the dynamic player he was all around that he used to be, but at his advanced age, he's super consistent. You know what you're getting from him, and he still produces at a very high level, and he's available. So Calais Campbell is my number 23. The number 22 on my 2022 NFL Interior Defensive Lineman rankings, Fletcher Cox of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I understand Fletcher Cox might be a little low in your mind for me, and let me explain. Fletcher Cox is still really good at what he does. He's not as good as he was a couple years ago, where he was still a top 5 player at his position, and at one point, the number 2 to Aaron Donald's number 1. At one point, he was that good. And you could argue Fletcher Cox, again, another guy that's a Hall of Fame caliber type of player and talent throughout his career. Super Bowl champion, consistent force in the middle. He doesn't quite have the stats that other guys do at his position, but that's not really his game. He's always been a mess the play up type of guy. He's always the guy that takes on multiple blockers, eats them up for lunch, breakfast, and dinner, and just destroys plays consistently, down after down, week after week, destroys game plans. If you can't block this guy, which a lot of people have not been able to over the years, the Eagles are going to be able to do things around him to be creative. He makes everybody on the defensive line better, and that's why I'm fascinated to see him moving forward, because part of the reason I move him a little lower on the list entering 2022, even though he was a top 20 player last year, is because Jordan Davis enters the fold. So Jordan Davis is going to eat a lot of the snaps away from Fletcher Cox, which makes Fletcher Cox a less valuable player because he's not an every down player like he was a year ago, and he's really helped JAVON HARGRAVE get a lot better as a pass rusher as well. He's the guy that allows him to thrive, kind of like Cameron Heyward would in Pittsburgh. Fletcher Cox plays that role now for Philadelphia, and he'll still play a pass rushing role as Jordan Davis maybe eats up more of the rundown role from Fletcher Cox to keep Fletcher Cox a little fresh. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cox numbers pass rushing wise actually improve overall, but he's not the every down monster that he used to be. That's why he's getting older, age is wearing him down, but he's still a dominant force, and he does have flashes in games where he's like his old self. So he's at number 22. Always been a massive fan of him and his play for Philadelphia. My number 21 interior defensive lineman entering 2022 is AKIEM HICKS of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now that is just something I gotta say real quick. AKIEM HICKS is on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, rejoining Tom Brady, and I believe AKIEM HICKS and Vita Vea are going to be a nightmare together for opposing offensive lines, especially when it comes January and playoff time. I don't know how teams are gonna run on AKIEM HICKS and Vita Vea. AKIEM HICKS is still really good. The only problem with AKIEM HICKS is the same problem that JJ Watt has, except it's been for less time, is injuries. But AKIEM HICKS showed last year that he's as good as ever. When he played, he was sacking quarterbacks left and right, causing pressure, eating up the run game. He's still an elite player in every facet. which is why I rank him above Fletcher Cox, which is why I rank him above Calais Campbell. Even with the injuries, he showed when he's on the field, he can be as productive as ever as a pass rusher, and he can be still really awesome and a monster in the run game. He's a force in his own right, and you allow him more single team blockers, more just individuals that you got to get by instead of double teams all the time. Let Vita Vea handle that. AKIEM HICKS is going to go off. Like, he's going to play the Ndamukong Suh role. It's going to be ugly for a lot of teams if he is healthy and he is ready to go and he is motivated wanting that ring. So AKIEM HICKS is my number 21. Entering my top 20 interior defensive linemen in the NFL today, Christian Barmore enters 2022 as one of the primary breakout candidates at this position. In his rookie season, Christian Barmore, according to Pro Football Focus, was their most impressive rookie they have ever graded at this position. And it went under the radar. A lot of people were focused on Matt Judon and what he was able to do, especially at the beginning of the year for this defense. But Christian Barmore was able to form a dominant duo for New England and a force in the interior they have not had since Vince Wilfork. And Christian Barmore, this guy could be one of the top 10, top 5 players at this position as soon as this season. He has that type of potential as a pass rusher. I can see 10 sack upside with his skill set as a pass rusher. Now, does he have some things to work on in terms of fitting into the New England system, playing his role as a run defender a bit more, and not be so overly aggressive that it exposes their run defense? Definitely. But that will come with experience in the system and age and also strength, because this guy's going to get stronger. He's already very quick. I believe Christian Barmore is going to be one of the primary pass rushers at this spot, and I'm really going to be intrigued to see how Bill Belichick gets the best out of him entering his sophomore season. Barmore did some things in 2021 that really impressed people, and I believe he will do even more this season. My number 19 interior defensive lineman entering 2022, finally, Ed Oliver cracks the list. Finally, Ed Oliver breaks through. Ed Oliver quietly, very quietly, had his breakout season last year. A lot of people wonder, the Bills were the number 1 defense last season. What happened? What changed? Their run defense got a lot better. Well, Ed Oliver just took off. He was a dominant force in the run game, in the pass game, and a well-rounded interior defensive lineman. They finally found his role, and his game elevated. We know Ed Oliver has all the traits of that Aaron Donald player. That's what he was drafted to be, right? They couldn't find his role. They couldn't find how to design him and how to scheme him up properly. And then Ed Oliver had to figure it out himself, and he finally did in 2021. He has great quickness, much better hand usage last year to get around blockers and play in the run game. And we know how explosive he can be off the ball. Really good pass rusher last year. Ed Oliver, maybe last year was finally the sign of things to come. And if he can continue to be a dominant player in the interior, it's going to make players around him much better. Von Miller comes in, and that could help him as well with a guy that knows how to get to the quarterback, elevating Ed Oliver's game, even somewhat as a tutor. So Ed Oliver is still very young, getting better. I expect his best season yet in 2022, but good for him. He was looking like a bust for a minute there, but he finally cracked through and made my top 20. My number 18 interior defensive lineman in the NFL is David ONYEMATA of the New Orleans Saints. ONYEMATA of the Saints, every time I see him, mostly against the Bucs, he takes over the game, wrecks the game, and causes Tom Brady to see his shadow. But every single time David ONYEMATA hits the field, he is extremely underrated. I don't think a lot of people understand how good this guy can be, especially as a pass rusher. Extremely explosive, combination of quickness and power, and not the greatest in the run game, but solid nonetheless. ONYEMATA is probably the most underrated player at this position over the last couple of years. He was suspended at the beginning of last year, came back, and he just took over again and elevated the Saints defense from what they were early in the year and really solidified the middle of that defense because he is the go-to guy. They don't have the depth they used to at that position. He is the guy that takes over games and makes people around him better. He also really thrives in this system, gets uphill, shoots gaps, quick off the ball, big guy. I think ONYEMATA is perfect in this system. And again, over the last 2 to 3 years, probably the most productive, underrated D lineman in the game on one of the league's best defenses. My number 17 interior defensive lineman in the NFL is Christian Wilkins of the Miami Dolphins. Christian Wilkins, another guy that I feel is extremely underrated by the casual NFL fan. You might not notice what Christian Wilkins does for the Dolphins, but what he mostly does is that old school New England Patriot, like Richard Seymour type of role, where his sacks aren't going to be super high, but he's a great run defender and a quality pass rusher, and he can do everything on the D-line for the Miami Dolphins. He fits right in that scheme, right in that system, and I believe he's just been able to elevate his game slowly from season to season since being drafted. Fits perfectly with this defense and doesn't get a lot of recognition for what he's able to do as a one-man run game wrecking crew, and not the greatest pass rusher in the world, but not below average whatsoever. A player that continuously is getting better and better and better with a little bit more experience. You'd expect him to have his best season yet in 2022. Don't sleep on Christian Wilkins, one of the biggest parts of a good Dolphins defense. The number 16 interior defensive lineman in the NFL today is Quinnen Williams of the New York Jets. Quinnen Williams has as much talent at this position as anybody possesses on this list. He hasn't been able to be productive week in, week out. He's a little bit inconsistent, but his flashes and his upside are enough for me to rank him at number 16. Once again, last year, I believe he had 7-8 sacks last year. Still a very strong pass rusher at this position. Maybe could be a little bit more technically sound and situationally sound and just play his role a tad better. He's maybe a little bit reckless in the design of the defense, but I believe that is because of how explosive, powerful, and gifted he is, that the coaches probably just tell him to go for it most of the time. And he was the guy that was counted on to be their biggest pass rushing threat. Him and John Franklin Myers were really the guys that had to get to the quarterback because their edge position suffered last year. They had nobody. Carl Lawson got hurt. A lot of guys were injured. So he was counted on to be that get to the quarterback type of player. So you're not going to see him be as phenomenal against the run as maybe anticipated. But that being said, he's still up there in run stops. He's still up there in making plays in the run game. So you can't take too much away from him. I was just maybe expecting a bigger jump last year than what we got. I feel like he stayed at the same level instead of elevating his game to the next level. So that's what I'm looking for in 2022. I will also say that it's going to help to have guys like Jermaine Johnson and Carl Lawson on the edges to take maybe a little bit of pressure off him as a pass rusher and allow him to thrive more as an all-around player. My number 15 interior defensive lineman in the NFL is DJ Reader of the Cincinnati Bengals. DJ Reader, first season with the Bengals, goes down, hurt. Terrible. You'd never want to see that when a team signs a player to a big contract. He gets hurt. But man, was he crucial to this run last season. DJ Reader, extremely undervalued. One of the game's best run stuffers. And in the Super Bowl, in the playoffs, man, this guy was an absolute beast. I look at that Titans game where he was a one-man wrecking crew on the defensive line for the Bengals, just stuffing Derrick Henry, play after play after play. They couldn't get the run game going with Derrick Henry because DJ Reader was just eating people for lunch. I mean, this guy, when he is on his game, he is probably the best individual nose tackle type player in eating blocks and winning the run game. Just overall disrupts and opens up the avenues for guys like Trey Hendrickson and for Sam Hubbard to eat as edge rushers. He's so good. I feel he's so undervalued. Great with leverage, great with his power game, great just overall super unsung player for the Cincinnati Bengals. Everybody talks about their receivers, but man, DJ Reader was so big for them last year, and he will continue to be in his prime now in 2022. My number 14 interior defensive lineman in the NFL entering 2022 is Dexter Lawrence of the New York Giants. Dexter Lawrence is another one of these defensive linemen that's a big monster nose tackle type that is awesome at defending the run. Just unblockable in the run game. The Giants could put 3 guys on their D-line, and it doesn't really matter because 2 of them are awesome. And Dexter Lawrence is just a beast. You can't block this guy. You have to double team him. At the point of attack, he's one of the strongest players in the NFL, one of the best run defenders in the NFL, and he got better as a pass rusher. That's why I move him up on this list. He got much better as a pass rusher, much more explosive, much better with his hands, just overall much better at diagnosing the pass game and getting to the quarterback and setting up blockers. I feel like Dexter Lawrence is about to take off this year. I wouldn't be shocked if he was the best nose tackle in the NFL in 2022. He's going to be a big force on this Don Martindale defense. My number 13 interior defensive lineman entering 2022 is the underrated, unsung defensive lineman of the Washington Commanders. That is DARON Payne. Now, we understand that Payne and Jonathan Allen had a little fit on the sidelines and didn't like each other very much in the moment, but they're very good together. Payne and Allen, they set each other up in a lot of games. Payne is the big force in the middle, the run stuffer, a lot like the Dexter Lawrence to the Leonard Williams. When it comes to Washington, of course, it's Payne and Allen in the inside. And Payne is the big run stuffer that allows everybody else to thrive individually, because Payne takes on the double teams. Payne eats up the run game. And Payne, again, was highest in run stops last year, tied for first in that category. Absolute monster in that regard. One of the strongest players in the NFL. One of the biggest beasts in the middle of any defense. And you have to have a player like this. You have to have a player like this to have a dominant defensive line, to have a fearsome foursome. And I believe in 2022, with Payne continuing to be a beast in the run game, Chase Young back, these guys should be one of the premier defensive lines in football. I really respect his game because he's not going to have a ton of stats, but he's going to be a big impact player, especially when it comes to a run defending type of style of player that can play on all 3 downs. That's how good and talented he is. And DARON Payne is my number 13. My number 12 interior defensive lineman in the NFL. We enter the category of players, the tier of players that can really dominate as pass rushers or run defenders. And number 12, beginning that tier, is ARIK ARMSTEAD. ARIK ARMSTEAD, for whatever reason, I don't think is respected as much as he should be. ARIK ARMSTEAD is an extremely rare player with extremely rare versatility. I love him as a player because he is the modern Michael Bennett. Maybe not quite as good as Michael Bennett, but for this 49ers style of defense, he could play on the edge. He could play in the inside. He could do whatever you want. He's got the height. He's got the size. He's got the strength. He's got the speed and quickness. He's got all the tools to play in any defense, any scheme, and be productive. And he's shown that he can be a 10-sack type of guy. Last year, ton of pressure, one of the most productive pass rushers from the interior in the league. And I just love what he offers the defense. I love how versatile he can be. I love how one game he can be the best run stuffer on the team, and another game he can be the best pass rusher on the team. So ARIK ARMSTEAD, stop undervaluing this guy. He's really good. My number 11 interior defensive lineman in the NFL entering 2022 is Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett certainly took a step back last year, but how much of that is truly the team around him? I mean, he doesn't have much help. Every single offensive line that he faces knows that Grady Jarrett is the guy. And there's nobody even remotely close to taking any pressure off of Grady Jarrett. That's why he still ranks at 11, because his numbers don't suggest he's a top 11 interior defensive lineman. I'm not going to lie. But his productivity and his impact, without looking at stats, still showcase a very good player that can still play at a very high level and can still take over a game even if he doesn't get a sack. And that is so crucial to interior defensive linemen. And Grady Jarrett is the biggest proponent of that. You don't have to get sacks to be an awesome player at this position. Grady Jarrett does everything well. He's powerful. He's quick. He's got great hands. He's one of those shorter, stout defensive linemen, but extremely powerful, can get underneath you and push you back, and can make everybody around him better. He just needs help. Entering the top 10 interior defensive linemen in the NFL today, at number 10, one of my personal favorites, Leonard Williams of the New York Giants. Leonard Williams is one of the best, man. Just season after season, doesn't really get recognized for what he does, but season after season, puts up about 10 sacks, really productive as a pass rusher, monster as a run defender, and really, Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams were the whole defense for the New York Giants last year. Like, there's nobody else to really remotely speak of here in terms of producing and helping this defense be good. Really, the only times the Giants shut down opponents where Leonard Williams was taking over the game from the inside pass rushing, and him and Dexter Lawrence were shutting down the run game. And it forced offenses into bad spots. Otherwise, they had no chance. So Leonard Williams is productive as a pass rusher in games. He's really long and produces as an edge rusher, as an interior rusher, as a guy that can win one-on-one, or even somebody that's extremely smart and savvy. And I believe he's going to be extremely productive in Don Martindale's defense because he's really good in blitzing schemes. I think he could have over 10 sacks this year. Really good player, really well-rounded, and really consistent. Leonard Williams. My number 9 interior defensive lineman in the NFL had a huge season this past year, JAVON Hargrave of the Philadelphia Eagles. The reason JAVON Hargrave isn't a little bit higher, like some may think, like Eagles fans might say to me, is because Fletcher Cox is still there taking on the double teams and helping him out. But JAVON Hargrave went off as a pass rusher this year. Not the greatest in the run game, solid, not bad by any means. He's a top 10 player at this position. He could do both fairly well. But as a pass rusher, he's awesome. Like, he combines great quickness off the line, ability to go speed to power really well, and just a force, man. A force. Like, I don't know what it was this year. He just found the extra gear. He was always really good. Good player. Bam! Just took over as the force on this defensive line. And I absolutely believe that with Jordan Davis now joining the crew, Hargrave's only going to benefit from that even more. So JAVON Hargrave is my number 9. My number 8 defensive lineman in the NFL today is Vita Vea, the big, unique monster of a man in the inside of the Bucs defense. And it's really hard to compare anybody to Vita Vea in the NFL today. He's perhaps one of the most unique NFL players there is. You could argue he should be higher on the list. The only thing that Vita Vea doesn't really possess at the level of the elite players on my list is that pass rushing productivity. Vita Vea kind of has one move as a pass rusher. It's successful. It works. It helps the defense. Don't get me wrong, bull rush. But he's not going to beat you with quickness or really hands or anything like that. He can every blue moon, but not consistently. He's a bull rusher. He puts people in the lap of the quarterback, and that can really help edge rushers overall and help push the pocket, which can be uncomfortable for quarterbacks out there. But he is the best run stuffer in the NFL. I don't think there's any debate about that, not just individually, but how he helps the rest of a defense. Because when you run up the middle on the Bucs, like, good luck. It's not going to happen. Like, you have to run to the edge. With Vita Vea on the inside, he makes teams run to the edge. So you know as a defense how to scheme that up and how to stop that. So that's why the Bucs have been so good since he's gotten there as a run defense. And I believe he is a 3-down player, which is extremely unique because he's so heavy and so big, but also extremely quick for his size. He is one of the quickest players I've ever seen as a big fat man in the NFL. So Vita Vea is number 8. My number 7 interior defensive lineman in the NFL entering 2022 is my guy, Kenny Clark of the Green Bay Packers. Kenny Clark disappointed me. You know, I was touting him as a top 3 player at this position a couple years ago, and I truly believe he deserved that. And if you put him at number 3 or whatever this year, I wouldn't blame you. He's awesome. Last year, he wasn't as good, so I knock him a little bit for that. But Kenny Clark was back to his dominant self last year. And the problem with Kenny Clark and why he can be a little inconsistent is because of how much pressure he is under in his role in Green Bay. I mean, it's been a long time since the Packers actually gave him a partner in crime that he could work with on the inside. It's really Kenny Clark. Their run defense is Kenny Clark. Like, that's it. It's Kenny Clark. It's this guy in the middle taking on blocks. And then not only that, but where he separates for me as a nose tackle as the best in the game from Vita Vea is his ability to get to the quarterback as well. Like, he was one of the best pass rushers in the NFL this year from his position as a big man in the middle, which is very, 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 very rare. So Kenny Clark, extremely underrated in my opinion, probably the most underrated Packer there is, but really, really good football player, one of my favorites. My number 6 interior defensive lineman in the NFL right now is DeForest Buckner of the Indianapolis Colts. It just feels like every year I make this list, every year DeForest Buckner ranks high. He's just really well-rounded, has basically no weaknesses. He's super strong. He's quicker and faster than you would think for his size. He looks like a transformer. Like, the guy looks like a transformer. He's like 6'8", and he's 300, 295, but he's all muscle. He's a beast, man. There is no weakness in his game. As a pass rusher, he's a force. He's the best pass rusher on the Colts. As a run defender, he's the best run defender on the Colts. He's a one-man wrecking crew type of show out there for the Colts on the D-line and makes everybody better around him. DeForest Buckner, he's a transformer, period. Entering the top 5 interior defensive linemen in the NFL, Jonathan Allen is my number 5. I think Jonathan Allen is the elite interior defensive lineman that doesn't get enough credit. I think because of when people think of the Washington Commanders, they probably think of Chase Young. He's the big name, but he's not the best player on this D-line. It's not even close. It's Jonathan Allen. It's not even a debate. Like, this guy is an absolute beast of a freak show out there. This guy is arguably, other than Aaron Donald, the best pass rusher at this position. He's getting close. He's really, really quick for his size. Really good hand usage, like took it to the next level this year. Really productive. And even with the injuries on the D-line, he was still a force. Really good in the games, like I said, with DARON Payne. Really good job. He just knows how to sack the quarterback, knows how to find ways, doesn't give up on plays, feisty that way. He's a well-rounded player, mostly known for his pass rushing, but can really stuff the run as well. Just an absolute force and still young. Like, this guy could be getting better. This guy might even be better in 2022, which is scary. My number 4 interior defensive lineman in the NFL is Cameron Heyward. I understand he's getting older. I understand you could see a dip in his play this year, but I'm not counting on it. This guy has been so consistent. One of the most consistent NFL players, especially when it comes to defensive players in the NFL. Like, Cameron Heyward, at this point to me, has a legitimate debate to be the best player in his system and scheme that has played over the last 10 years. Like, he is that good. I don't think people realize how good this guy has been for this many years. Like, since day one, he has been really good in all facets of the game. I believe he's one of the best run defenders in the NFL today, and that is where he shines the most. And if you're wondering why TJ Watt is able to get 4,000 sacks, Cameron Heyward is a big reason why, because of his savviness, his intelligence, how he can help TJ Watt get those matchups and make those plays. Don't get me wrong, TJ Watt's amazing, but it takes duos and trios on the D-line to work together to benefit greatly as a pass rushing unit. There is a reason the Steelers are always great rushing the passer. Cameron Heyward is in the inside, being a beast and an animal that he is. So, arguably the best run defender at this position, and maybe not a top tier pass rusher, but still extremely productive, and just season after season, the most consistent guy there is. My number 3 interior defensive lineman in the NFL is Jeffrey Simmons of the Tennessee Titans. Jeffrey Simmons was a game wrecker last year. Every single game. If you're wondering why the Tennessee Titans defense elevated to the next level when nobody saw it coming, why Harold Landry had a big breakout year, why Denico Autry looked way better in Tennessee, well, you just have to look at Jeffrey Simmons. This guy is a machine. He is so strong, so powerful. Arguably the strongest guy at this position in terms of the ability to transfer his strength to his power pass rushing ability. The ability to bull rush people, the ability to quickly wrap around, accelerate, and bury an offensive lineman into the lap of a quarterback. He produced a ton of sacks last year, ton of pressure last year, a beast in the run game, just super well-rounded, and the best player on Tennessee's defense. The reason I have faith in Tennessee's front four and their defense moving forward is because of how good Jeffrey Simmons is and was last year. I slept on him early in his career. I've slowly grown to become a very big fan. He is the difference maker that Tennessee needed last year, and he played extremely well. My number 2 interior defensive lineman in the NFL, feels like every single season we're talking about him at number 2, unfortunately. He can't ever crack number 1, but Chris Jones is number 2. Chris Jones is by far the number 2 pass rusher in the NFL at this position. Like, year after year he produces, year after year he gets the sacks, he's efficient as a pass rusher. He's just not quite the well-rounded down-to-down force that Aaron Donald is, so he's number 2. I feel like you could have argued a couple seasons that Chris Jones was the second best defensive player in the NFL. That's how good Chris Jones has been over the years, and I believe continue to be. I mean, he's still pretty young. He's still adding to his legacy on a very good team. And in legitimate big moments, Chris Jones always seems to come through as a big premier force. Chris Jones has been kind of the difference to me between a team like Kansas City and a team like Buffalo, where Kansas City has that force in the inside that Buffalo doesn't have. The guy that can just impact the game on the D-line. He makes all the difference for Kansas City in their great success defensively, because a lot of the times, Kansas City has not had a lot of great talent around him, especially on the D-line. And Chris Jones just makes it work, and he makes everybody better. He elevates the defense around him, and it doesn't matter, double teams, whatever. He's going to get to the quarterback. He's going to make plays. He's going to bat down passes in the Super Bowl. Whatever he's got to do, he's going to do it. That's why he's my number 2. But my number 1, Aaron Donald, I don't think I need to say anything. Like, I don't know. You guys want me to say anything? Like, I really don't need to break this down other than the fact that it was really cool to see Aaron Donald make that final play on 4th down to win and seal the Super Bowl. That was really cool. Like, to me, that was a moment. The Super Bowl last year wasn't exactly electrifying, but that was a moment. And Aaron Donald finally had his moment. And I believe when he retires, you might be able to argue that Aaron Donald was the greatest defensive player that has ever lived. And that is high praise, because I didn't think anybody could even get close to Lawrence Taylor and his impact, but Aaron Donald is getting very close. Those are my top 25 interior defensive linemen in the NFL today. Let me know your list in the comment section below and what you thought of my list, where I was accurate, where I was wrong. Thanks for watching. It's Mitch, and continue to watch these rankings videos. Gronk spike the like button and subscribe. Support me and my goal of 40,000 subscribers before the 2022 NFL season. Thank you guys so much. Peace.